My name is Vijay Kapoor, and I am a teacher of traditional Vedantic principles. I met my current teacher about 25 years ago, and at that time I was working as a senior manager at Hewlett-Packard because I have a computer science background. I have a master's in computer science from Berkeley. And in general, I was skeptic of spiritual principles. I had to see for myself what could be proven, what I could. Science was really, I was a scientific person and an engineer, as you can imagine. But yet, I was not completely happy in my life. I was successful, I was married, had a couple of children, and everything seemed to go well. And yet there was something missing. I wasn't sure exactly how to be happy. Even things that other people would find to be satisfying, like going to parties or going to bars and so on, didn't really appeal to me. And yet I just didn't know what else I could do. And all of that really got changed once I met my teacher, who explained to me the principles behind who I am, what am I doing, and where am I going. And that just led to a transformation of my personality, to the effect that I started to look into the principles enunciated with my teacher, whose name is Swami Dayananda, as something that requires some systematic inquiry, much as any kind of a branch of science does. And the more I looked into it, the more solid and specific and confirmative that it became. And it so happened then I left my job at Hewlett-Packard and I studied with my teacher at an ashram for close to 2.5 years. And we studied through all of the principles of Vedanta. And I graduated in '82, went back to my job, continue on with it because I was a family person. I had a lot of responsibilities. And then I took early retirement in 1999. And now I am continuing my own studies and also teaching. So I have about 100 students in the South Bay. And we go through a very systematic study, pretty much like I've been told about that. So that's kind of like where my background is. So non-duality would be, it is not the absence of duality. It is something which transcends duality. And I think a good example of that would be that if you look at the various instruments of, let's say, golden ornaments, better than instruments, golden ornaments. So you may have a golden ring. You may have a bracelet, and you have other kinds of ornaments. Now, there is a duality between one type of ornament and another type of ornament. So, for example, it's very possible that the ring may feel jealous of the bracelet, and vice versa. And really speaking, the two are totally different. Their shapes are different, their weights are different, and so on. But if we step away from the form of the ornaments and transcend that to see what is the substance behind it, and we find that it is gold, then the gold by itself does not have any duality because it is also in the form of ring and it is also in the form of the bracelet. And it is not opposed to it in that manner. In fact, it transcends it. And so the non-duality is something which inheres, is prevalent both Or another thing in terms of the ornaments, another example is that there was a time when a ring was not. There is a time when the ring will not be. And so the beginning and the end of the form of the ring is relevant. It is not relevant for the gold. There is no time. It is always a gold. Of course, the gold itself is, this is just an example. So similarly here, what we find is that in our experience, we have youth, we have old age, we have waking state, dream state, we have lots of different dualities. We have male, female, friendship, lack of friendship, number of different things and so on. What we find is that the very basic consciousness, which is the very fundamental building block of all of these kinds of things, has no duality. It is independent of time. Youth has dependence on time, and so does old age, so does friendship, all of that. It has time dependence, it has space dependence, but consciousness has no dependence whatsoever. So in that sense, it is like the gold, where all the ornaments need the gold and by itself may have duality, but the very content of duality does not have duality. That is the concept that we look at. The I is this consciousness. I is really, in fact, there is a very famous verse which says, Ahamasmi sada bhami kadachit naham apriyaha. So he says that in the deconstruction of the I, we have to go to something that clearly defines it. It should not be tangentially defining it. It should be completely defining it. And the complete definition of the I is that it is and it is aware. And so really speaking, what you find is that the building block of everything in this life, if you look at anything, let's say you have a chair. So the chair is, in my thought, there is a chair thought. The chair thought is replaced by a carpet thought and a table thought. So the tableness goes, the chairness goes, the carpetness goes, but the isness, which is the very fundamental building block of all of these forms, does not go. And the isness is me. This is the mistake that we make. So the chair actually borrows the isness from me. So we look upon the chair and we find the chair is. So we think that the isness belongs to the chair, when in fact, isness does not even belong to me, because I am not different from the isness. I am isness. So that isness, and also another thing, that what is also aware. You cannot have isness and awareness separate from each other. It is the same thing. So that is the I. It is the very building block of all experiences, which is not displaced by any of the experiences. So I am, ahamasmi, sada bhami, I am always aware, kadatim nana priyaha, and I never am alienated from myself. That is the I, which is the very basis of all the creation. So that's how I would deconstruct the meaning of the word I. everything is a form of consciousness. So just like, for example, we looked previously about the ornaments. So all ornaments are, in that example, are gold. Yes, in that sense, really speaking, we have everything which is consciousness. In fact, if I may extend that to give a very important principle of truth in Vedanta, we essentially have in our experience two things that we divide things into. Either a thing is or it is not. So you find do I have a car? No, I don't have a car. It's being serviced. So either the car is there or it is not there. Is there food on the table? No, not food on the table. So our expansion of reality extends into two parts. In fact, there is a third one, and which is an important one. And that, once we go into that, then the answer to is everything awareness becomes a little clearer. So we look upon reality in three parts, not in two parts. So one is, which is the definition of truth is one which is never untrue. So let's define it that way. It is never, under any circumstance, it should not be untrue. This is the definition of truth. The opposite of that is that under any circumstance, this should not be true. And the example of that is a square circle. There is no such thing as a square circle. Not possible. Two heads on a human being. Not possible. Not possible. Now, there is a third one. And so the third one is, which appears to be truth, but it borrows the truth from someplace else. It's not its own. So there we have three definitions of truth. First, which is always true, never untrue. The second, which is never true. And the third, which is something in between. This in Vedanta is called mithya. The first one is called satyam, means always true. The second one, which is never true, is called tucham, just to give the Sanskrit name for it. And the third one is called mithya. Mithya meaning that it appears to be true, but it really is not, in the following sense. If we go back to the example of the golden ornaments, if you look at a ring, so the ring appears to be a separate object. Now, the ring in fact is mithya because the weight of the ring is the weight of gold. The look of ring, the color of the ring, the feel of the ring, the shine of the ring is all borrowed from gold. It is not its own. You cannot say, gold says, I'm going to leave, you please be on your own. You cannot be. Having said that, now we can answer your original question. Everything is consciousness, yes, because everything is mithya. And the only satyam is the self. And so the action of anything is the action of the self. The death of something is its own because the underlying thing does not die. See, so the shape of something is really inherent in the self. The action is inherent in the self. Everything is really borrowed from the self, and the self does not change, but the borrowing of it can become like mithya, very much like the ornaments of the gold. So to summarize, I would say that everything is consciousness with an asterisk, because everything is basically mithya. And the mithya depends on satyam for its existence. Yes. We have to bring in the creation and the creator. And so the concept of the creator is an important part of it. And so in Vedanta, we look upon the creator, you can look upon it as Ishvara or God, in two different aspects of it. Traditionally, we think about God as a conscious entity who is the creator, and the world as the creation. This is how we look upon it. What we fail to realize, if we only look upon it that way, is that the creator has to build the creation out from material. Now, where is that person going to get the material from? If you say that the creator borrows the material from, you go to Safeway to buy it, or to Whole Foods or something, that doesn't make any sense. So, in our definition of Ishvara, or a all-powerful creator, we look upon that both as an intelligent cause as well as the material cause. So what that means is that the material of the world and the intelligence of the world are intertwined. And so therefore, the complexity, now to answer your question, the complexity of the world is not there at all at one level, and is therefore at another level, very much like going back to the golden ornaments. In terms of the gold, there is no complexity. He says, what complexity are you talking about? Because I'm gold. Whether I'm separate from each other, I'm still gold. But from the standpoint of utility, or the lack thereof, non-utility, there is a sort of an interplay which appears to be there. And so in the case of the creator and the creation, at one level there is no complexity whatsoever. But in order to have a creation, there appears to be a duality, complexity. And this is very, very clearly shown by the dream example of human beings. And there is a seeming complexity. You have a dream with lots of things going on, but there is nothing going on. It is all just a play of the mind. And at the end of the whole thing, good or bad, good dream or bad dream, it goes back to the creator of the dream. It actually never was separate from the creator anyway. It was just a point of view. And so when the point of view, the play of that is over, it goes back to its own creator. And there is no complexity. So the complexity that we see is only a temporary, individualistic point of view. From a larger macro level, there is no complexity. It's all in order, and there is in fact no differentiation between good and bad. It's everything is the same. Yes. We're talking about the same thing. In fact, quantum physics is concerned with the disturbances, the nature of any kind of movement, any disturbance, even at the very subtle level of the basic principles of the particles of the earth and so on. That is in fact the building block of the creation by the creator. And so, as we were saying earlier, one of the principles of Vedanta, which is science, is that even science is not as scientific as it should be. Why? Because one of the principles we look upon is you cannot have anything come out of nothing. That doesn't make any sense. Okay? That is a contradiction in terms itself. So therefore, whenever you have a phenomena, any kind of phenomena, which is the basis of the inquiry of quantum physics and so on, and I think they have come along a long way. For example, having this equation between energy and mass, that those two in fact are two different states of the same thing. If you look at all of those things, what you have to find is that they must have come from some place. There must be a basis of it. And the basis of that is really the self, which is Sat and Chit, which is isness and consciousness. And so that isness and consciousness, in its slightest form of disturbance, creates the basic particles, which in fact, when it is moving further, creates solidity. So for example, our teacher also says that how it is that if your hand really is 99.999% transparent, and yet it doesn't feel transparent. And the physicists know this because there is really the only thing that's holding things up together is magnetic forces. It is just an appearance. And so really speaking, the entire conglomeration of Vedanta, of science, quantum physics, and spirituality is the same. It is the same. There is not any difference. There's just a different way of looking at it. And quantum physics and quantum mechanics is becoming much more intelligent in terms of explaining it. And Vedanta really doesn't almost care how you explain it as long as you come to the truth in that sense. So they're all coming together, yes. We have it and we don't. So the best way to explain that is that if you have a cow which is tied, has a rope tied to its neck and has maybe about 50-foot radius. So within the 50-foot radius, it can go anywhere. If it wants to munch some grass over here, it can do so. If it looks at some solid foods here, you can do so. But it has to stay within 50 feet. So yes, there is free will, but the free will is to be interpreted in terms of what it can or cannot do. So for instance, the human being born as a human being, you have freedom. You have freedom, as much freedom as you want. But suppose you want to go to the next galaxy within this life. That is the 50-foot radius. And so the free will is free within the confines of the creation. Within that, you can do anything. You can sleep all day long, you can not sleep at all. But the fact of the matter is that if we really look at the truth of it, we are not completely free. Because a complete freedom would mean, as I was mentioning, that you just think about it and you go to Andromeda galaxy. You can't do that. You have some limitations. And so really speaking, having said all of that, once you transcend matter and you understand the self, you find that there is no need for free will or not free will. It is not necessary to have free will because you have complete infinity. And so, but within the confines of a creation, the concept of free will is relative. Yes, within the certain range you have free will, and outside of the range you don't. So this is the way our teachers explain it, is that it is there and it is not there both. And it is not absolutely free, but yes, within the confines you can have a good life, or you can commit suicide, or whatever you want to do. It's purely up to you. Yes. Nothing exists prior to consciousness, and nothing exists afterwards. It is all-encompassing. It is the very content of the whole creation, whether you're looking at earthly creations or different creations, different planets, different time periods, whether you look at Big Bangs or the end of the earth or something, it all happens within consciousness. Because you can see it, you can see that at any point in time, it is a creation is. Whenever you see something, it is, and it is conscious. Without that, there is nothing. So there is nothing before I and nothing after the consciousness. It is the very fundamental building block of everything. What we say is that the quest for enlightenment is very natural, very sensible, and inevitable. Everybody will sooner or later go to that. So it is just a part of the evolutionary process of the individual. It turns out that this journey is a very peculiar one, as I just talked about it in the morning. This is a journey which is already done but not understood. Very much like waking up from a dream. And so this is not a physical journey, it's a journey of understanding. And it has two main parts to it. One is to find the right teacher that can explain this to me. And the second thing is to engender my own preparation so that I can be ready to understand it. So very much like the famous equation E is equal to mc squared. It is in fact the truth. And if I want to understand the truth, I have to go to the right teacher. How do you mean that this mass is the same as energy? It doesn't appear to be the same. It is the same. And some competent teacher must explain that to me. All right, supposing tomorrow the very creator of this equation, Einstein, comes in and says, okay, I'm here, let's talk about it. That's factor number one. Now, if I'm 11 years of age and I don't have not finished my algebra yet, I cannot understand it. So the sense of preparation also has to be there. I must prepare all the ingredients to a point. I must understand what is an equation. An equation is a very important thing because 5 is equal to 5 is not an equation. But 5 equals 3 plus 2 minus 1 plus 1, etc. is an equation. And so unequal sides that have to be understood to be the same is the equation. So to say that I am the whole is an equation. That the individual I and the total I is one and the same is an equation, but one that I don't understand. So I have to find the right teacher that can explain this to me, number one. And number two, I must prepare myself for the understanding of the subtleties of what that means. And so the quest for spiritual enlightenment means that I should really understand who is a good teacher, go to that person and find out what is it that I need to do in order to prepare my mind for a complete understanding. Once that happens, then a final smile comes. And the final smile has two parts to it. One is that you may understand the principles of it very well, but to eliminate all the doubts about it takes a little while. So we would say that enlightenment has both a sudden element to it and a continuous element to it. And the sudden element means that at least you should have a pretty good grasp of what it is talking about. But then after that, I have to work on my silly doubts, and those things have to be eliminated. And then finally it just becomes apparent. So that's how we look at enlightenment.